when we take this power of this invisible part of us, it's so hard to define this. We call it a belief, or you call it a thought, or you call it your soul, or your spirit, or whatever. But that invisible part of you that really determines everything about your life. And you begin to say to yourself, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be, to bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you, and question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk, and the drunk slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you, and you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know, now who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee, or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I mean, I've done that so many times in my own life, and things that don't seem like they're that important to other people. Like, my wife doesn't understand why certain things about my tennis game that I play every day that I've really challenged. I mean, I grew up with the belief that I couldn't hit a backhand. And it was for 10 years I told myself that I don't have a backhand, I can't hit a backhand. And then I began to change that belief around. And it wasn't that I just, practice. I began to visualize myself doing all the things that it takes to make a backhand work for myself. I began to do that with a serve. I began to do that with a drop shot. Instead of telling myself, I can't hit a drop shot, and then acting out on that, and a whole match will go by, and a whole year will go by, and I'll never hit a drop shot, or I'll never hit a lob, or I'll never try a spin serve, or whatever. If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, you act on that belief, and whether it's just a silly little thing like improving your tennis game, which isn't so silly if you're making your living off of it, or if you're coaching it, or any other skill area, or anything in your life, change around the thought, as you think, so shall you be. Now, I'm in a 72-year-old body today. I remember being in a 20-year-old body, and in a 30-year-old body, and a 40-year-old body. And you can't find one cell of the body that I was in when I was 20 years old, 50 years ago. There's not one cell left. You go out there and I can't find it. It had all kinds of flowing stuff coming out of my head, and it's like it's gone. You're not doing anything. You're just being done. That's one of the things that the Tao says, that the Tao is just another term for God. The Tao does nothing. It leaves nothing undone. It leaves nothing undone. Makes the planets stay in alignment, the sun comes out, the oceans are filled, there's life that goes on, fish reproduce themselves.
Roses show up, and there's nobody out there doing anything. It does nothing. So the question of who we are is can't be answered in physical terms, and it can't be answered with the senses. Your senses will lie to you. They will tell you something, and it's just not true, you know. I mean, our senses even tell us right now that we're sitting still when we're hurling through this ocean, right, at 20 knots. But we're also, so is the whole ocean hurling through space at something like 11 or 12,000 miles an hour. And it's also orbiting around the sun and turning on its axis. So it's turning, orbiting, and hurling all at the same moment. And your senses are saying, I'm just sitting here. You don't see with your eyes. You have to see through your eyes. The part of you that is processing what I'm saying here right now has no form to it, has no beginning, it has no end. There's an infinite part of you. There's an invisible part of you. And until you're comfortable with it and know it and understand that it is the creator, the creation takes place through this creative process within you, called your mind, called your thoughts, called your spirit, called your soul. And one of the things that I have learned is that it's necessary to understand what your soul is to follow your excitement. Now hear this. Your excitement is who you are. Just let that in. We're getting very philosophical. I love it when we get like this, especially when I know we have lots of time, so we can just take it, you know, just... Your excitement is who you are. You're not this body. It's the soul. It's this invisibleness. It's what causes you to feel passion. It's following your excitement. And it's something you can do at any time. And when you do, I guarantee you these two things. It will be effortless, and you will always be supported. It's always an effort when you are not following your excitement. What is it in here? What is that creative spark that just makes you want to do something, or you just feel drawn to do it? And the more you pay attention to this spark, this inner excitement, the more it will support you, and you'll find yourself doing amazing things, like really amazing things. Here's what Patanjali, the great 3rd century BC Indian scholar, great beautiful soul, who was the father of meditation, one who taught me the japa meditation and the I am meditation. He said, when you are inspired, inspired means in spirit. When you are inspired, that means when you are following your excitement. When you are inspired by some great project, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he said, and this is what I mean by being effortless, he said, dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be, or I say were ever taught that you could become, because you were not raised to believe in your divinity. You were raised, as Rumi said in that thing I read between the Chinese and the Byzantines, you were raised to believe in your limitations. And you don't know that within you, you have God. You are God. God is not an external concept. It's what the ego has taught us that it is. So that if you can answer the question, who am I? Who am I? And understand that who you are is a divine speck, if you will, a divine fragment of the universal consciousness. God's one and only voice's silence means that God is that which is indivisible. There is no place that God is not. And you can't divide God up and say that God is on this side or God is on that side. I've often said that God isn't doing anything different now than God was doing an hour ago or 100 years ago. And God isn't doing anything different now than he will be doing 1,000 years from now. God is exclusively here and now, not elsewhere, not in heaven someplace apart from us, but here, now, and indivisible. And the word indivisible is very important, because that which is everywhere and cannot be separated or carved up is something that we have a great deal of difficulty in the world of the physical form experiencing and understanding. Because our world, the world of you listening here, is a world of dichotomies. It's a world of paradoxes. We divide everything up. And dichotomies are just our way of being. We divide everything in the world up. The only reason we know that something called darkness exists is because of light. If there was nothing called light, we wouldn't know anything called darkness. The only reason we have a concept called up is because we have something of its reverse called down. You've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back. You've never seen a person with an outside who doesn't have an inside. We divide everything. Everything is in the world of the divisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks about transcending the dichotomies, figuring out a way to get past the up-down, the male-female, the good-bad, the right-wrong, the old, the new, the alive and the dead. Everything has its dichotomy. You can always find its opposites. In fact, that's how the symbolism of language is created, through having opposites. We don't know about oneness in the physical world. Everything has its counterpart, its dichotomy, except for silence. Silence is the only experience that is the same as God. It is indivisible. You take silence, and we'll have some right now, and now let's just cut that in half. And what do we have? More silence. Let's take what we've cut in half and cut it in half again and again. And endlessly you attempt to divide into a dichotomy, silence, but you can never do it, because silence is indivisible. And silence is God's one and only voice. When you go into silence, you go into the place where you make conscious contact with God, whatever it is that God means to you. You make conscious contact with that omnipotent, omniscient force in the world, that omnipresence of God. And the reason I say that it's not crowded along the extra mile is because the mile that most people are on is a very, very noisy mile. And I encourage young people to become more comfortable with silence. We live in a world of bulldozers and leaf blowers and trucks that make endless amounts of noise and chatter. And constantly, I have a home, a place a retreat that I go to frequently on Maui, And oftentimes I will walk in the morning and they're in a big building project in Maui, and I'll go past one building after another and start to count the noisemakers as all of these machines and all of these people who are trying to make the place look so pristine and so beautiful and so landscaped, instead of just letting it grow, just letting it be. Silence and God are one because you can't divide either one of them. Okay? So that going to silence as frequently as you can, and understanding that out of silence, everything is created. The words that you are listening to right now as I speak emerge from silence. That silence is the source. And it's the source that is what we want to make conscious contact with. Like the source of all light is the sun. And the only reason we know about light is because of something called darkness. But when you go to the source can't be divided.
Two quotes. The first from the Upanishads, quote, "Life in the world and life in the spirit are not incompatible," unquote. And from Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish theologian, quote, "The majority of men live without being thoroughly conscious that they are spiritual beings," unquote. Heaven should not be thought of as a place you'll ultimately arrive at once you leave this earthly existence. Rather, it seems to me that you'd want to experience heaven right here on earth. As the title of this chapter suggests from a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth itself is crammed with heaven. But do you see heaven in your daily life? Do you feel as if you're in a heavenly world? If the answer is no, then you're out of balance. You've probably made your physical world the primary focus of your life, with little or no attention given to the heavenly part of your earthly existence. What this imbalance looks like. When you place the larger part of your life energy on the material world, you're generally in a continual state of worry about your stuff, and you feel like you'll never get ahead in this game of life. Virtually all of your mental energy is focused on what you have or don't have. You assess your worth based on such material issues as what kind of automobile you drive or how fashionably you're dressed. You may even feel inferior because other people have more stuff. This imbalance between the spiritual and material world usually means that indebtedness is a way of life. You place a heavy emphasis on winning, becoming number one, and comparing yourself to others. A preoccupation with the material aspects of life leads to looking at life in a superficial way, where appearance is viewed as more important than substance. What others think is the most important measuring device, and how you stack up to externally imposed standards becomes all important. All of this anxiety that leads to stress is avoidable if you opt to balance the material-spiritual scale. Just a balance, an even split between these two aspects of yourself, is all you need to achieve. The title of this chapter, Earth's Crammed with Heaven, is meant to signify that it's all right here, right now, not in some other place in a distant future years from now, or after the death of your physical self. Heaven is right here, now, at this time, when you find your balance point. Equalizing the balance scale. Heaven is a state of mind, not a location. Since spirit is everywhere and in everything, you can begin equalizing your material and spiritual life by making a conscious decision to look for the unfolding of spirit in everything and everyone that you encounter. I personally do this by making an effort to look upon my world as if I were observing it through lenses that filter out the form and all of the material aspects of what I'm seeing, and I can only view the spiritual energy that allows what I'm noticing to exist. Try putting on these imaginary magical lenses and see how different everything appears. The natural world is a pleasant place to begin this experiment. Nature. When you look at a tree without these imaginary form-fitting lenses, you may see branches, blossoms, leaves, and perhaps mangoes or plums. With your enchanting new lenses, the lines that form tree boundaries dissolve, and there's an energy vibrating so fast that it gives a whole new perspective of the tree. You see the spaces between the leaves, and notice the silence of the now defunct acorn or mango pit out of which the first sprout of creation emerged, jump-starting the whole process that eventually became the tree you're looking at. You see the continuation of this life-giving process residing deep within the tree that lets it sleep in the winter and blossom in the spring, or into infinity, or at least for the duration of its life. You realize that new mangoes are producing not only new fruit, but an infinity of mango trees as well. You see this life force in just one tree extending backward and forward in a never-ending stream of creation. Begin looking at all of nature with this new vision. Birds, ants, lakes, mountains, clouds, stars, all of it. Deepen your vision so that you no longer see only form and boundaries. Appreciate the miracle that is your environment. As you do so, you're getting into balance. People. These new lenses allow you to see everyone in a fresh perspective. You're no longer seeing tall and short, dark and light, male and female, old and young, beautiful and homely. Your lenses blur the lines that categorize people by cultural or religious differences, and you don't see others as only their attire or physical appearances or the language they speak. All appearances dissolve through filters in your lenses and your thoughts, so you now see the unfolding of the spiritual energy in every person you encounter. What you notice is pure love vibrating right before your eyes. You see kindness personified. You see and feel the same vulnerabilities in all others that you feel within yourself. You see enormous strands of peaceful, glimmering energy connecting each of us. Your new outlook invites you to playfully imagine that 2 people created you, and 4 people created the 2 people who created you, and 8 people created the 4 people who created the 2 people who created you. As we go back a few more generations to the time of Abraham Lincoln, there are 16,000 people you're related to who had to come together to create you. We can imagine going back to the time of Socrates and puzzle over the apparent math we come up with. Trillions of people were needed to create one of us, but trillions of people haven't even existed, so somehow, in some mathematically puzzling way, we're all related to each other. These are the kinds of fascinating connections that you can begin to observe with your imaginary lenses, transforming your thoughts. You discover that there's no one to judge, no one to hate, and no one to harm, because you see clearly that we're related. In fact, we're all one. From here, you can extend your perspective to include all of life. Events. Where you once viewed the comings and goings of people as pure happenstance in current time, shaping the events of your life and the lives of everyone else, your new filtering lenses allow you to see how all of these things are connected energetically. Now you see an infinite network of laser-like energies emanating from the thoughts of everyone, blending the events in everyone's life in energetic perfection. You see people with very fast vibrations of energy matching up perfectly with the energy of the source of creation. You see how they attune with the all-creating, all-knowing source of life, and how events are perfectly attracted in a vibrational match. You also see what appears to be accidents, tragedies, and horrors, and how they, too, are vibrational matches that collide in what you've called mistakes, but are really the result of 2 or more energies meeting in a larger picture that you couldn't previously see. You witness the connection between the expectations of individuals and what they attract into their lives. With these amazing lenses, you note that all events and all accidental encounters are really incredibly compatible vibrational matches rather than randomly occurring situations. With this awareness, you're attaining a level of balance between spirit and form.
Do you know your past? Do you know where it is? It's only where you think. Do you know that every relationship you have, close your eyes, just close your eyes. Just close them. Okay, where's your husband? Where's your wife? Where are your children, your grandchildren? Where's your ex-spouse? They're all in your mind. Open your eyes. Now they're gone. Close your eyes. There they are again. They're just in your mind. You carry your relationships around in your mind. And if your thoughts about your relationships are on what is wrong, what you don't like, what you hate, what they did to you, that will be your experience. And you will materialize or manifest more and more of that pain into your life. If you look at what you love about them and make that the focus of your attention, that will be the nature of your relationship. It's the greatest secret in making any relationship work. It's so simple. Always focus on what you love if you want that to expand in your life. When you look at someone that you're in a relationship with, look at what you love, because what you think about is what expands. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on, about not giving energy to the things you don't want, because what you think about is what expands. And if what you're thinking about what you don't want, then more of what you don't want will just keep showing up. It's the only way it works. So now I'd suggest to everybody in this room and everybody listening that you take an eraser to all of the wounds of your past, and you just send them away. And don't make them your calling card anymore. And bring the presence of God to those problems. And the presence of God is nothing more than a higher, faster energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. As Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. And spiritual energy is just energy that moves very fast and at very high frequencies. And problematic energy is very slow and very low frequencies. And when high, fast frequencies are put in the face of low, slow energies, they are nullified. They dissipate. They can't survive. There's a song that they sing at a lot of the churches that I speak in. It says, "Surely the presence of God is in this place." It's a great affirmation. Anytime, or the affirmation from A Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. But surely the presence of God is in this place. Every time that I have a conflict with one of my children or with any place, I just bring that line to bear on what is I am experiencing right now. I just bring that line to bear. Surely the presence. Because there's no place that God is not. As the little child in India in the 7th century, who was an avatar, who was really God in a human form, and everywhere he would go, people would be healed just by being in his presence. Just like St. Francis. He'd be seen in the village, he'd be seen in the valley at the same time. Lights would emanate from his body wherever he would go. And everyone in the village knew that this was a child of God. This was God in their village without the benefit of an ego. This was an egoless being who had shown up in their village, which is what I believe our great spiritual teachers were. Like there's ways to reach highest levels of consciousness. One of them is to take on an ego and then spend a big hunk of your life seeing if you can shed as much of it as you can. Which has been my path. But there's another one where you just show up and you never take on an ego in the first place. There's only been a handful of those in recorded history. And this little child was one of them. And the elders in the tribe knew that this was God in a human form. And they went up to the little boy and they said to him, trying to bribe him, "I'll give you an orange," they said, "if you can tell me where God is." And the little boy, without hesitating, said, "I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God isn't." It's one of the very fundamental precepts of this entire program, is that there's only one power in the universe, and that is the power of God. And that whenever we see evil, it's nothing more than love going in the wrong direction, away from its source. And all we have to do is figure out a way to get it to turn around and start returning to its source. Because there's only one power in the universe. And every time we think that we are in something that isn't good, like a problem, like disorder, disharmony, disease, discomfort, what we've done is we've used our mind to create a separation from God. And as long as we are moving away from that source, from that spirit, as long as we're moving opposite of that, those problems continue to manifest. But if we can somehow figure out a way to turn around and move back in that direction, we can eliminate it.
Non-erroneous zone people, which I now call NEZ, N-E-Z, are different from the normals in our world. While they look very much like everyone else, if you observe very closely, you'll note distinct qualities, none of which are racial, socioeconomic, or sexual, which disconnects them from so many other people. They do not fit neatly into any role definition, job descriptions, geographic patterns, educational levels, or financial statistics. There's a different quality about them, but the different part is not discernible by scanning the traditional external factors that typify many efforts at classifying people. They may be rich or poor, male or female, black or white, living anywhere, doing just about anything. And yet they are different in that they have no erroneous zones. How can you tell when you run into a Nez person? Watch them. Listen to them. This is what you'll discover. First, and most obviously, you see a person who likes virtually everything about life. Yep, this is a liker. A person who is comfortable doing just about anything. And one who wastes no time in complaining or wishing that things were otherwise. They are enthusiastic about life, and they want all that they can get out of it. They like picnics, movies, books, sports, concerts, cities, farms, animals, mountains, and just about anything that you can include in your list. They just plain like. When you are around them, you'll note a startling absence of grumbling, moaning, or even passive sighing. If it rains, they like it. If it's hot, they dig it rather than croak about it. If they're in a traffic jam or at a party or all alone, they simply deal with what is there. No pretending to enjoy, but a sensible acceptance of what is, and an outlandish ability to delight in virtually everything. Ask them what they don't like, and they are hard-pressed to come up with an honest answer. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. Why? Because they see rain as beautiful, thrilling, and something to experience. They like it. Slush doesn't send them into a fury. They observe it, splash around in it, and accept it as a part of what it means to be alive. Do they like cats? Yes. Bears? Yes. Worms? Yep. You'll be hard-pressed to come up with things, events, people, activities, or ideas that they dislike. They live, and while such annoyances as disease germs, droughts, mosquitoes, floods, and the like are not warmly embraced by Nez people, they never spend any of their present moments complaining about them or wishing that they weren't so. If situations need to be eradicated, then they will very likely work as eradicators, enjoying themselves and living all of their present moments. Try as you might, you'll have a tough time coming up with something they'll dislike doing. Truly, they are likers of life, and they wallow in all of it, getting out of it all that is possible for them. A Nez person is free from guilt and all of the attendant anxiety that goes with using up your present moments, being immobilized over past events. Certainly they can admit to making mistakes, and they can vow to avoid repeating certain behaviors that are counterproductive in any way. But they do not waste their time wishing that they hadn't done something, or being upset because they dislike something that they had done at an earlier moment in their life. Complete freedom from guilt will be the shocking behavior that you will observe in your Nez person. No lamenting the past, and no efforts to make others choose their own guilt by asking such inane questions as, "Why didn't you do it differently?" Or "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And so on. They seem to recognize that life lived through is just that, and no amount of feeling bad will alter the past. While they practice this non-guilt on themselves without any effort, because it is natural, they are remarkably free from even helping others to choose guilt for themselves, because they see with a third internal eye that feeling bad in the present moment only reinforces a poor self-image, and that learning from the past is a far superior tact over remonstrating about the past. You'll never see them manipulating others by telling them how bad they've been, nor will you be able to manipulate them with the same tactics. They won't get angry at you. They'll simply ignore it and see you as someone who is a guilt dispenser. Rather than being upset at you, they'll go away, or they'll change the subject. Hence, you won't even recognize that the very strategy that works so beautifully on most people has failed dismally on your Nez friend. Rather than smear themselves and others with guilt, they just unceremoniously pass when it comes along. Similarly, your Nez chap will be a non-worrier. You'll soon note that circumstances that drive many people to frenzy will be mildly internalized by a Nez person. They are not planners and putters away for the future. They refuse to worry when you do, and they keep themselves unmucked up by the accompanying anxiety that goes with worry. You can't drive him or her crazy with worry. They don't know how to do it. Almost as if it is just not a part of their makeup. Not necessarily calm at all moments, but just unwilling to spend any present moments disasterizing about things in the future over which they have no control. They are very present moment oriented, and they have an internal signal that seems to remind them that all worrying must take place now in the present moment, and that it is a foolish way to go about living one's current life. With no present moments ever available for awfulizing, they just never seem to get around to the business of worry that so occupies most lives. Your Nez person is able to live now rather than in the past or the future. They are unthreatened by the unknown, and they seek out experiences that are new, untried, and unfamiliar to them. They love ambiguous things rather than being upset by them. They love the now in virtually all settings, being aware that this is all that they have. They don't plan for a future event and let long periods of inactivity elapse as they await a payoff. The moments between events are just as livable as those taken up by the events themselves, and they have that uncanny ability to get every pleasure out of their daily lives. They are not postponers saving for a rainy day, and while their culture admonishes such behavior, they are unthreatened by reproachment. They gather in their happiness now, and when a future now arrives, they gather in that one as well. Strange, but this Nez individual is always enjoying simply because they see the folly of waiting to enjoy. This is not some special credo that they've adopted. It is the natural way of living, very much like that of any child or all animals. Grabbing heavy doses of present moment fulfillment, while most normals spend their lives waiting for their payoffs and never being able to seize them. These people are strikingly independent people. They are out of the nest. And while they have a strong love and devotion for family, they see independence as far superior to dependence in all relationships.
So, knowing that we have a higher self, or a highest self, really means detaching ourselves from a lot of the things that we have come to believe is who we are. Now, the beliefs that we have, that we've grown up with, that we've practiced all of our daily rituals on, is what I call the tribe thinking, the thinking of the tribe. You see, all of us are members of a tribe, and that tribe might be your immediate family, it might be the ethnic group to which you belong, it might be the people who share the same color of skin that you happen to have. It may be people who have the same philosophical points of view, or political points of view, or religious points of view, or people who are related to you genetically in some way, cousins and aunts and uncles and so on. Anyway, there's this tribe that we sort of are born into, if you will. What I'm talking about here, when you come to know your higher self and to live by it, is leaving the tribe and leaving tribal consciousness. You see, to be an individual, when you go to the tribe and you tell them, I've discovered something that's about manifesting, and I'm going to really practice this, and I'm going to do this, and I know I can do this. Jesus said we can do this. Sai Baba told us we can do this. Muktananda tells us we can do this. I'm going to do this. What I'm saying to you is that if you're going to learn manifesting, and you're going to understand your highest self, you have to somehow figure out a way to let go of this idea that the tribe is going to give me approval, or that I'm going to do it within the parameters that the tribe has dictated. Because what you're doing when you're learning to manifest, or when you're learning anything that is outside of the restricted parameters of the tribe, what you are doing is you are speeding up the evolution of your awareness and your consciousness. You are saying, I am going to evolve at a faster rate. But if you go to the tribe and tell them that, immediately you're going to get put into your place. You see, the mantra of the tribe is, but what will they think? That's the mantra of the tribe. What are they going to think of me? And the minute that you start playing that game of what are they going to think, you have stopped yourself from being able to evolve at a faster rate of speed. You don't go talking about it. I happen to be talking about it because I'm trying to encourage you to do it. But when I decide that I want to manifest something, when I put my attention on that, that's a very private matter between me and God. The reason that you don't share it is because it takes the energy away from what you are doing and puts it on the attention of the person that you're trying to convince. Immediately you get ego in there. And the minute that you get ego in there, you shut down the energy. You shift. So leaving the tribe and the tribal consciousness is really, what you're saying is, if I'm going to evolve at the speed at which the tribe is evolving, you're saying I'm going to evolve, but I'm going to do it very, very slowly. And if you want to manifest, if you want to really become a manifester in your life, you don't have enough time in this lifetime. You've got to come back in 19 lifetimes. Right? You don't have enough time for that. So it's almost like getting out of that consciousness. When the question was asked of Dr. Maslow, when I asked him this question personally, what does it mean to be self-actualized? He said there are three things that you have to know and understand. One is you have to learn to become independent of the good opinion of other people. That's like at the top of the list. You have to become independent. Self-actualizers are independent of the good opinion of other people. Secondly, self-actualizers are people who have no attachment to the outcome. They are detached from the fruits of their labors. They know what their life is about, and they get on with that, and they don't get themselves concerned with how it's going to work out. They turn that over to God. They just have this knowing that it will, and that's enough. And the third is that they have no investment in power over other people. No investment in power over other people. So they're not really trying to convince anybody else or to subjugate anybody else or to dominate anyone else with their abilities. And these people who have these divine capacities are usually very, very quiet about it. And they will get disapproval and they will acknowledge it. And it's okay. They just move along. They don't allow that to be the focus of what it is that they're going to do in their lives. I can't tell you how many people, but it's up in the hundreds of thousands, that have written to me over the past quarter of a century and told me their difficulties, their struggles, and how if they would have learned one of these three lessons, or all three of these lessons, to be independent of the good opinion of other people, to be detached from the outcome, and to get rid of your investment in the need to have power over other people, how much peace you would have in your life.
And that allowing is a great substitute for doing, and trusting, and knowing that when you align yourself in the way that I'm asking you to align yourself here today as I speak to you about meaning, when you align yourself this way and begin to trust in what Lao Tzu called your original nature, and when you understand your original nature and you return to it, basically that's all you're ever doing. Even with all of the medical practitioners that are out there, basically they're really trying to help you to return to your original nature, your nature of well-being. There's not a doctor on this planet that can heal anybody, and they will all tell you that the body is the hero. It is not any medicines or any surgeries or anything out there that is what's doing it. That healing is this most magical thing. It's like the wind, you know. It's just, you can't get a hold of it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't grasp it, and all you can do is just watch the results, watch the effects of it. You cut your hand and it bleeds, and you just watch it. And all of a sudden, things start happening inside of your body, and red blood cells head towards that direction, and white blood cells start doing this, and all kinds of things begin happening, not just there, but in your heart, and in your lymph system, and in your elimination system, and then your neurological system. It all starts working together, and it starts sending things to it, and such a scab forms, and then the scab dries up, and then there's a scar, and then things start. Nobody's done anything. What is there to do? It's part of the magic of allowing, of just getting out of the way and not trying to do too much interfering. Yeah, if there's something in there that you have to take out, you take it out gently, but you don't fill yourself with chemicals and things that the body is going to just have to process and have difficulty with as well. This is from Abraham Heschel in a wonderful book called Man is Not Alone. I loved it. He said, life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. That you'll never find meaning through your ego. Life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. And secondly, this is from Albert Schweitzer, everyone's hero. The one possible way of giving meaning to your existence is that of raising your natural relation to the world to a spiritual one. In other words, you have to return to spirit if you're going to find meaning. This is from Emmanuel. Our mind doesn't know the way. Our heart has already been there. And our soul never left. Welcome home. Isn't that good? Our mind doesn't know the way, our heart has already been there, and our soul never left. And this is what I wrote. Having arrived home, each breath we take is an expression of our life's purpose. We no longer struggle to win, to gain the approval of others, to meet expectations others had for us, to acquire, to achieve, to hoard, or to fulfill someone else's idea of our dharma. We let go of conflict, certainty, being right, fighting, dominating, vanquishing, and feeling superior. All of this ego stuff loses its power and attraction when we arrive home where meaning and purpose welcome us. We are home. From our home is where we began. You got to know that that's our home. That was our beginning. Ambition, all the way away from our home to take on a false self. A reverse, and all of the signs of coming back, returning home. And now we're home. And this is where meaning begins to be the dominant force in your life. It begins to be the all. And those around you or in your life and those you encounter who would try to take you away from your meaning no longer even become obstacles to you. They become, in the Tao it says, a good man is a bad man's teacher, and a bad man is a good man's job. They become your job. They no longer become someone who annoys you and finds fault with you. If they do find fault with you, you're immune to it. As Maslow used to say, learn these two things and you're self-actualized. Become independent of the good opinion of other people and detach yourself from outcome. In other words, do what you do because it is your calling.
Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the two titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling. And then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating. Our heart sings in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment. But more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say, traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me, and I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and Our Ultimate Destiny. Quote, "Just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well." Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.